All right, well, thanks everybody for coming tonight and for agreeing to have this work session with us. We really appreciate it. I know there's been a little bit of miscommunication about maybe what the intent of the work session is, and it was about the budget, which it's not. Really, we've been talking as a school board for a while about, can you guys hear me okay? Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm not used to speaking with a mask on. Now I know what teachers go through. Am I
You can
allowed?
take it off.
I was
Yes,
told I
please.
wasn't allowed. Okay, I'm gonna take it off. But we've been talking for a while just about how we can work together with the assembly so that we're not just coming to you once a year when it's budget time, when things are stressful, intense, and we're all under tight financial constraints. So we just wanted to have this time to talk with you and just kind of talk about our common goals, give you a little bit of an update on where the school district is at. We are very, very proud of our school district right now in this pandemic, where we're at, the fact that our buildings are open, our kids are in school. So we just wanted to give you a little bit of update on that. We can talk about our financial situation. We're in a tough spot, just like you guys are, and just like everybody in this town is, in this country is. But that was kind of our intention, was just to come to you and say, hey, how can we work together? What can we do moving forward? Can we meet periodically? What do you guys want from us? What do we want from you? So that's the goal of tonight, hopefully.
Let's begin by introducing each of you folks so we know who you are.
Yeah, so I'm Amy Morrison, and I am the president of the Sitka School Board as of June, maybe, so pretty new to this position.
I'm Blossom Twitchell, and I was recently appointed.
Eric Van Cise, Vice Chair.
Andrew Hames, also recently appointed in June.
And I'm Paul Ryu. I came on last fall and I serve as the clerk.
Right. Thank you all for doing that. I think you know everybody here, Kevin and Steve and myself and Dr. Wayne and Tor Christensen, Gary. Yep. Okie dokie.
All right, so can I go into just a little bit of an overview,
yeah,
kind of where
sure.
we're at right now?
Yeah, sure.
So, first of all, we want to thank you for the financial support that you guys have given us back in the spring at our budget time, funding us to the cap, the Secure Rural Schools funding that you guys gave us, and then the CARES Act funding that you guys gave us again. So, I want to specifically hit on the Secure Rural Schools money was able to go to, we have a total of 19 AmeriCorps volunteers that we use that money for, which have been so instrumental in the schools right now. They have taken on a lot of, they can't replace teachers and they can't do the jobs of teachers, but they've been so instrumental in just helping, like taking temperatures on the buses and when kids get to school, just all the extra things that we had to do to get the schools open. So thank you for that. That money has, I think, been very, very well spent. They came at a cost of $15,000 a piece, which is pretty remarkable. And like I said, our schools are all open. Everyone is attending school all day, every day, with the exception of Sitka High School. And just with social distancing, they just couldn't fit everybody in the schools at all times. So they do day on, day off. So you go to school one day, then you're online the next day, then you go to school the next day. As a parent, I can tell you some days you're like, is this the day my kid has to go to school? It's a little bit complicated, but it's working, and our administrators have been fantastic. They worked all summer without being under contract and without getting paid for it. John Holtz, our interim superintendent, has been incredible. He's worked so well with everybody, and like I said, I'm just really, really proud of what everybody has done to get to the point we're at. We expected to hit some snags when school started, and honestly, there have been a few little things, but not too bad. So, and right now we're still in the green. If we get one more case, it does push us into, which is the lowest number, the lowest threshold for us. It will push us into the next level. I don't know exactly what that would mean, but hopefully we won't get there. So, Eric, I think, did you want to speak to just our partnerships?
Yeah, this was, I had spoke to those of you as maybe a couple weeks ago, just during government to government, so there may be a little bit of a repeat on some things, but one of the things that's been that really has stood out for me and our board, and I think for all of us, is just how the community, all, private, citizens, businesses, just how much everybody has been focusing on, if I just take the school district, how to help out the school district. Earlier on, it was something that we didn't know was going to occur with the COVID, but just the mere fact, and we know that this doesn't necessarily happen every year, but the fact starting out for us with our budget, having the budget early on that you as an assembly approved and laid forward, that in the future, futuristically came into be a key player, because typically when all of the COVID really went ballistic on us in March, that was usually our typical heavy time for working with the budget and doing things like that. And because of the work that you folks did, we were able to, we knew that was done or relatively done. It was a huge load that we were able to, not have to worry about it. We could focus. So that was instrumental for us. Just the collaborative things again with getting started, Amy spoke about our administrative team, but our district staff as well. There were several teachers that spent the entire summer doing credit recovery. We had 50-some students, I believe, that hadn't actually met the criteria to move on to another grade. And I want to say, and I could be corrected, there were maybe 20-some teachers that basically stayed on all summer helping kids, to get that credit recovery and start. So between admin, staff, everybody has been great on the district. As far as our community, when things started up, what was so nice is that we as a community and yourselves have been following basically our unified task force, looking at doing the decisions of this town based on science, based on the latest information. And as I said before, we've managed as a community to do a really good job at keeping the politics and emotions, even though we have them, but not impacting the ability to move our community forward. But all of these businesses, Pruitt's, the bus company, for example, Trudy and her group, they were, before we even approached them, they were coming up with plans of how to work with the buses. And a lot of things, they came to us and said, hey, this is what we can do, instead of us having to say, oh my gosh, we got buses, where we work out. Sitka Tribe was instrumental with our helping acquisition the one-to-one electronics, and as well as what you folks helped us with, and just all of their work. Safe Shelter, Gary Smith and Shasta Smith, they have a storage unit that when we had to reduce the classrooms as far as get rid of desks and extra stuff so you could have the social distancing, they opened up their storage for us. And the Sitka Conservation Society, the store vendors. And anyways, I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's been really, really remarkable. It's not been easy, but all we have to do is look at what's happening around our state to other communities and across the nation. And there's some really struggling times, and we've really appreciated all those partnerships. And I think as we move forward, if we get into areas that are kind of dicey, as a school board member, I feel very confident that our town can work through it. So thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Yeah, this is the ethos of our town, though, I think. Troubled times, we all work together, whether we've got things we agree on or disagree with, for the common good. Yeah, okay. Any other comments from the school board?
One other, I was just going to mention Search too has been fantastic in working with us and testing and, just really and giving us a lot of guidance in what to do. So they've been really great too. I did want to just hit on kind of our financial situation, and just so you guys do understand where we're at. Because things are definitely different than they were back in the spring when we did our budget. So our funding from the state is pretty much based on our student count. And our student count is down. It's not down, it's about 53 students. And I think the majority of that is because they've either chosen to do homeschool or, some other form. They just haven't shown up for online school, whatever the reason is. But if that's the number that we still have at the end of October, when it's our official count, we stand to lose about $715,000 from the state that we included in our budget. So that's our biggest budget gap that we have right now. We expect our COVID expenses to be roughly around $1 million. Just things like, the PPE equipment, the transportation, custodial services, food services. One of our biggest ones is just heating. We have to heat the buildings, I don't know how to say this, differently because of the ventilation. Like, you can't circulate the heat the same way. So our heating bill will probably be substantial. So we're expecting about $1 million in additional costs. We received $304,000 directly from the federal government as a school district, and then we received the $430,000 from the city, which again, we're incredibly grateful for. But that could potentially leave us with a gap of $200,000 to $300,000 there also. So we definitely have to figure out some ways of cutting. It's hard to do that in a current budget cycle because the majority of our expenses are personnel and teachers, and they are all now under contract. So we can't, let teachers go mid-contract during the year. So we have made a couple tough cuts, like in the district office, we eliminated the assistant superintendent position. And another thing that you guys gave us money for that has not come to fruition was trying to hire a full-time counselor at Pacific High School, which we definitely see as one of our strongest needs, having a counselor at every school. We've been advertising for it, interviewed a couple people. We're in a pandemic. Nobody wants to move to Alaska right now to take on a job, so we have not been able to fill that position. So we've had a few things where our budget has been a little bit favorable, but overall it's not a good situation. I guess I just wanted to say, we didn't put in a request specifically for the additional CARES Act funding because, like I said, we know times are tough for everybody. We know you have a lot of different places you can spend that money, and we just want to be sensitive to that. And if there's other places, we want to do our part and take our fair cut, just like everybody else has to. But at the end of the day, if you guys have extra money and you need somewhere to give it, we would, we could spend it, and we could spend it on the on the COVID-related expenses for sure. But like I said, we're all in this together. We want to work together with you guys, and but at the same time, we obviously will advocate for our kids and for education, and we are just very proud of the fact of what our school district is doing right now, and the money is being spent very well. I can assure you of that. So
I speak for the assembly, where the preparation and execution has been pretty close to flawless. And so,
Yes.
everybody from top to bottom needs to be complimented for that, Amy. You're right about that. How much money do you have in reserves?
I don't know that. I want to say, does anyone else know? Maybe around 300,000 in our unassigned reserve balance.
Which is nothing, okay.
Yeah, 200,000 to 300,000 is my estimate.
Nothing, okay. Questions from the assembly or comments? Yeah. Yes, Steve?
Just a couple basic questions just to kind of see how it's going, because it does sound and appear to me that you as the board and you as an organization have done an incredible job of keeping our schools functioning, open, and working as best as we can for our students. So that's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm hearing. So kudos to you guys on that one. The day on, day off at Sitka High School, does that necessitate extending the school year at all? Or are they going to be able to get enough schooling in that time frame?
It's kind of weird. They only do 3 classes, but those 3 classes are like double time. So like normally you get only half a credit, say you take a math class for a semester, you get half a credit. Well, that it's a 1 credit class. So they're condensing into 1 semester a full year's worth of curriculum, if that makes any sense. So normally a regular school year, you would end up with 7 credits at the end of the school year. This year they could end up with 6. So there is 1 less credit available, but there's also some extra classes that are being offered, like electives at the end of the regular school day to help with that.
Okay, great.
So it should not affect anybody's ability to graduate.
Yeah, it might be interesting to see if that option was even available going forward then, if it works out, some accelerated schooling there. I wish that would have been available for me. I don't know that it would have helped any, but are there any long-range or any large obstacles, long-range obstacles coming before you that you kind of see, like, what might happen if COVID, what if we go into the red? I don't know. Is there anything on your radar right now in 3, 6, 9 months from now that we should probably know about and start thinking about as well?
Does anybody else want to? I'll let someone else talk.
Well, I'll jump in on that one. So, as you well know, between our COVID funds, we were well on the way to being a one-to-one district. So basically having electronic access for every single student. We were supposed to be finalizing this year, and we ended up doing just that, but a little bit ahead of schedule. So with working with SCA's generosity, we've gotten every single student from K through 8 has access to an iPad. We're waiting on some cases for the middle school so they can go, but they're training while in person now. So if the case comes where they're doing, if they're forced to go into the red and go back to schooling from home, both the students, the parents, and the technology will all be prepared. So that's where we're working. And then each of the high school students has a laptop, and they're working on accessibility with that. One of the other challenges from last year was, of course, access. Not all households were online, and our internet providers stepped up last spring and really helped with that. But in order to mitigate that, we have, I forget what they're called. It's like a SIM card. So if a student's home doesn't have access to the internet, their device will be fitted with one of these SIM cards so that they can access through the cellular network. So that's how we're trying to preempt, prepare that if we get a wave or whatever they call it, if we have an outbreak in town and we need to step back and the students need to learn from home, we're trying to be prepared. So, and from what I understand, the feedback I've gotten from my students and some of the teachers, that seems to be going pretty well. They're glad to have the time in class to prepare and work out all the bugs now. So I think that covers it. And Stephen, I was going to add too, because I wasn't sure it was entirely clear. The high schoolers are going to school on their off cohort day. They're like, for instance, my eldest son today was, he logged on at 8:20 and he was doing asynchronous learning. So he's participating in class. He's just doing it from home.
Oh, okay.
So they're still getting those instructional hours every day. They're just half their hours are in the building and half their hours are from home.
Okay, yeah, I thought one day was a pajama day and the next day is an actual.
Oh, it's a pajama
get-to-work
day.
Dr. Wayne?
I have a few questions, a few comments, et cetera, but I want to let you know those SIM cards work great with Fortnite. I mean, they have enough speed and stuff, so everyone is going to be very happy. A couple of questions is that you're down 53 students, and now are those people totally out of the system? And so so they're totally out. So my question is, those people who are in reach, meaning not, in essence, participating at the school, are they counted within the district?
So, sorry, I was shaking my head, but no, those people aren't entirely accounted for. It's a really weird process because some students could be attending like online in other places, and there's this like fight for students that Cassie, our business manager, goes through every fall. So we don't necessarily know at this point in time if they're unaccounted for. Some of them could just be out fishing with their families and they just haven't come back yet. So we don't know the answer to that. So some of them may come back.
But if you signed up for REACH, that's
if you signed-
counted in the district, but they're not necessarily within the school system.
They are, but we don't get full credit for
Okay.
them.
How many people are in REACH?
I want to say it's around 70. Is that correct? Yeah.
I think it's pushing, I believe it's pushing over 80 right now. So.
Dr. Wayne, Dr. Wayne, could I just follow up with one connected question?
Just one.
Just, what's the percentage then of the credit that they get for REACH students? Because you say they don't get full credit. Talking about funding from the state.
I believe, I want to say it's like 75%. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. I don't recall.
Yeah,
right
that's pretty
offhand.
accurate. But one of the, but that's just on the base student allocation. So there's other things that are involved, though. The base student allocation goes down, but there's also other funding that may fluctuate depending on that too. So yeah, it might only be a percentage of the base allocation, but there's also, it's going to affect other funding areas because it changes the demographic of the school, especially for federal programs and things like that. It's, because it's going to shift our percentages. So, I mean, I can't pretend to understand everything Cassie does, but I try to glean some of what she says, and that's, it's going to have a significant effect on the budget next year.
Thank you.
And so the reason I bring that up is because if you bring all of these things into play, I think it represents some serious numbers. And I don't want that to be downplayed. And I think that's important. I will address that downplay in a moment and how it might be, the new word is mitigated. And that is one I saw in your note that the teachers are going to be tested every 2 weeks. A parenthetic is that I think 2 weeks is really not as clinically appropriate as you might guess. It looks good, well, we're getting tested every 2 weeks, but easily within one test to the next test, you can go through a whole COVID cycle by having it, and then in essence, be cured of it because you've gone through the whole shedding cycle. So every 2 weeks is not the way to go. I know at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the students who are coming back to campus are getting tested every 3 days. But, that is just to give you an example of value here. So I'm happy you're not paying for it, because if you were paying for it, I would say save your money.
I'll comment on that. We've worked very closely with Dr. Brule, and I forget the lady's name at the Department of Health and Social Services, but we're not doctors and we're not in the medical field, and we've gone 100% on what they have recommended that we do. So
No, I fully understand your position, but it is easy to explain the COVID infectious cycle, and how you make those decisions is based upon when you get it, when you become symptomatic and start shedding, and the length of time of that shed, and when the viral load begins to drop off. But that, like I said, is a parenthetic. What I do want to say is, now please bear with me before you get angry. I, in the past, have talked about secure rural schools and the 250K. And that is something that, if you have noticed, that when we had our sinking fund on Tuesday, do you know how much was recommended to be put into our infrastructure fund, which includes roads? 0. And so I think that is very significant as far as we stand. We are not allowed to use CARE Act's money for any form of budgetary mitigation. And so what I'm going to say to you comes from the heart, and that is, what I would like to see is for you to give back that $250K to us, and then we can use it for roads, which in essence would be something for the infrastructure. And as part of, in thinking about mitigation, What I was thinking, for example, I heard the plan for ventilation at the high school. For example, you're opening your windows, you kind of reverse flow, so you're pushing air out, and that means you're pushing heat out. And the schools are statutorily supposed to be at 70 degrees. So it's kind of like a wow as far as the meter running. I think that if you give us that money back, and then we can utilize it in an appropriate way. I think, since tonight is the focus, I think because of everything that's going on, I think that you should get an appropriation of like $1 million, and that includes the give back. So the 250 will be a wash, but you'll get an additional $750,000 to help mitigate some of these effects which are not going to go away. And ventilation, and I've been asking about ventilation a lot, this is long-term mitigation, ventilation, and I don't think that you're doing 6 to 12 replacements of environment as they do in other places as far as trying to have good ventilation. I don't even know where you stand. And if you're opening your windows as the mitigation, that's not a mitigation. That's not a fix. That'll be a total drain on things that are going on. And if there's a change in the price of fuel oil or whatever that's going to happen, it'll be a most interesting life for you. So what I would like to see is give us the Secure Rural that will help us with our infrastructure. And I would like to say that I think in tonight's discussions that we should give substantially more to the schools because of the incredible amount of complexities that you've been hit for. So it's kind of like, if you give us one, we'll give you 4. And I think that's the best way to do it. I know that businesses and nonprofits are all saying, well, we want that, $4 million or $3 million, which is left over. But at the end of the day, the needs of the school are going to come back to haunt the city. And here's where I feel we are at a unique time in history where we have CARES money. In the future, you're going to be depending on the city for the money, which we may not have. So to me, I would like to be proactive in mitigation and make sure you get money that we have. And my suggestion when we go into our thing is going to be, show me the money, bring it back, and that you will be rewarded because it is just, in just going over, thinking about how the city can mitigate and do everything, I think the school has an enormous set of problems and standards to fulfill. So,
We got 15 minutes left.
okay. I was, that was my wind-up and the pitch. So,
So, kind of go back when you were talking about how it's working. I would agree that it's working amazingly well. I mean, I was on the EOC when we were going over this, and when people asked me what I thought of it, I said, well, it's as good as we can do. It's not perfect, but it's as good as we can do, and it seems to be working pretty well. And I have to say that I appreciate. Personally, I appreciate the flexibility that the administrations have had. I mean, my oldest daughter was supposed to be taking her math at the high school this year. Much better.
Thank you. There are so many members for your comments, and thank you, Amy and school board. Good time to touch base in a little bit more informal setting, to kind of have some ideas going back and forth. I think that would be a healthy thing. The second thing is I do reiterate the thank you to the school board and the school district staff, John Holston and the entire staff, and the other community members. It isn't said a lot, but yeah, there's a lot of volunteering, a lot of hard work and dedication that has gone into helping to make sure that the school's open, and that, as John Holst said, no one's going to be perfectly satisfied, but we're trying to keep our emotions out of it and do the best we can. And I think that you have accomplished that, and everyone else has accomplished that. I'm grateful for that. Thank you very much. So My only other comment would be, as far as, and you're kind of hinting, I appreciate that your comments about the budgeting, and you're letting us know your needs, but also not making a demand. In the past, we've had a lot of hoo-ha and emotional, heated things which has not been helpful. I'm not making any accusations of anyone here. It's just, it's been a thing in the past, and that has died down lately, which is great. And I agree, we're going to have some tough decisions to make in the future. There's no contesting that. All I ask of the school district, the school board, is that with a good, positive relationship, when it comes time to making these decisions, that we meet as adults and respect the tough situation we're in, and don't try to paint dramatic pictures with drama and trying to make people feel guilty on either side. Let's just meet together as grown-ups and make the best decisions we can, as objectively as we can. And I think no one's going to be perfectly happy, but I think if we can come together and make, an agreement, we can get through this together. Thank you.
I'd like to make a comment and then ask two related questions. Not being an alarmist here, but it's interesting that this COVID thing came in the middle of 2 fiscal years. So I think the estimate for the 2020 budget is we're going to lose about $4 million from tax revenue, about the same for the 2021 budget. So we could all do the math. It's going to be a hard call. I mean, it is what it is. So we just got to know it. My two questions are related. Sports, basketball and other sports, and preparation and selection or appointments for college. How are we going to be able to? So I recalled our kids, that was a big issue, which they got a lot of help from their high school advisors in terms of college prep and so forth. So sports and college, getting into college.
I confirm. Yeah, those have been very much on the topic, Mayor, and for the sports, one thing similar to what our district is doing following the Unified Command is regarding extracurricular activities is the Alaska Association for School Activities, or ASA, up in there, the entity that oversees all of the high school sports. And they put together guidelines for the different activities, and which currently our district is doing the best they can. But that is something that we're hopeful as we move forward to working or looking at what ASA is doing with updates, where we can modify or do more things, because we recognize the value of those extracurricular. Regarding the so your other question was the
Preparation for college and applying for college and those kind of things.
I know that there's definitely in the previous years, and don't see it changing, is just maybe how it's presented. The career, it used to be called the college fair, but it's a career and college fair. It's still scheduled, where it may be where instead of having representatives coming into the school, there's more online abilities to connect students. And we recognize that we don't want opportunities to get missed for students to be able to prepare. We do have 2 counselors at Sitka High School that, among their other duties, a lot of that is focused around helping students at this point to figure out ways that they can get assistance.
Other questions? Yeah.
I do have, first off, I appreciate this work session too. It's definitely needed, and it's great to hear a financial picture. And that's what I wanted to give to you guys as well, as our financial picture, and kind of tell you the guidance that I've given to staff and putting our budgets together for presentation to the assembly. And I don't mean to be full of bad news, but I want to give you the realistic news. We plan for the worst and hope for the best. But our third quarter, well, let me start with this. We had a budget complete, as you know, a draft budget complete January, February timeframe. COVID happened. We saw what was happening with the tourist industry, and we had to more or less start over. I talked to the department directors and said, find me 10%, it has to happen. And we canceled all of our general fund funded capital improvement projects, roads. to basically be able to survive. Our third quarter sales tax numbers, Melissa, was it about $1 million short, or was it $500,000 short?
Down by about 1.5 million for quarter 3.
Okay. So that's our loss in revenue this fiscal year. With the loss of the tourist season this year, that will carry over into next year. The projections just in loss of sales tax is about $4.7 to $6 million hit that we're going to take. So in my staff meeting today, I told them there's 3 basic functions that that city government is supposed to cover, and that's our public works, our public safety, and our schools. Anything after that, I will call that an above-the-line type project, and the staff is more or less going to have to make a proposal to me on why it's important and what the impact is if we don't do it. So us working together through the budget cycle this year is going to be extremely important. And my question to you, and I hope this doesn't get misquoted in the paper, is that I hope that you guys focus on the 3 R's, the reading, writing, arithmetic, and start there and find out what the basics are. And you know, because I think this shortage is going to hit everybody, so we need to meet early and often. That's all I have.
Okay, we still have 3 or 4 minutes.
I'm just still sitting here trying to imagine a kindergarten teacher trying to control kindergartners with iPads and how that would look like, because that.
But one thing I'd like to just add to what, Stephen, when you were asking about projections or areas that we, one area, and it's not just our district, with potential changes as the COVID numbers, if a district or if we have to go to the red category where students go home, we have the technical, the devices. But one thing not only our district and other districts are finding out is that your tech support, just the sheer amount that, you know, your standard school has somebody who does the computer work and whatnot, and that's been a big lift, and we're actively looking at ways that we can help our actual single tech person who's, you know, working to do all this. And so, you know, looking forward, we've laid out a good foundation, but where we're in the past, we were thinking of staff members more maybe like a teacher in the classroom or something like that. It's more and more becoming an element where if we have to go to a virtual school, it's all for naught if you don't have, you know, some really good tech support. So I know there's a lot of networking going on of shared resources and stuff. So, but we're going to continue to do everything we can on our end, Mr. Leach, and the district has, when they decided to start up the school, you know, that very thing about what are the core basics that we need to do to be able to keep these students moving forward. There's not a lot of fluff. It is the basic classes that can allow those students to move forward, and hopefully we can move on, you know, expand that, but that's going to be predicated by many factors and budget. But we just we're here, and we just want to be good partners and have good civilized discussions, you know, and just always keeping in mind that the schools don't generate money. We're civilians. We're not the experts, but we can certainly get answers for you guys if we don't have them.
Amy, thank you and the school board for coming and sharing with us, and we're committed to working with you early and often to do the best we can for everybody.
Thank
God
you
bless.
very much. Appreciate it.
the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Call the roll, please, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Paxton,
Here.
Mr. Eisenbeis,
Present?
Ms. Nelson. Here. Mr. Knox. Dr. Ween,
Here.
Mr. Mosier,
Here.
and Mr. Christensen.
Any correspondent or agenda changes? We are now for persons to be heard. Any persons to be heard on any item not on the agenda? We're now in new business. Can I have a discussion
motion
first,
yet,
and then we
yeah.
have a motion, right? We're now in the business of discussing our donations to the nonprofits. And we have a spread here, sheet here, and there's one item that doesn't have the 4 votes, so that money needs to be redistributed, and under that category, it's the mayor and Mr. Knox who have money to be redistributed, so tell me what to do, Sarah. Do we just go ahead and ask Kevin how to redistribute his money, and then I do the same?
Yep, I think it's really up to the assembly at this point as to how to proceed.
Yes, Dr. Wayne. Okay, go ahead, Valerie.
My concern was, and the reason why my whole column shows a 0 is I wanted to see who received or had applied for the COVID grants, and it's not available yet, so I have issues with not having that information available.
Okay, right. Right, and both, I'm just, wake up, Pax. So both Valerie and Mr. Ween have to make their allocations. Yes, Dr. Ween.
The reason I put zeros in the column is very simple. Again, as mentioned at the school district meeting prior, we are at a unique time. And part of that uniqueness becomes the CARES Act money. And I feel that the CARES Act is also for nonprofits. And therefore, just as I said, I want the secure rural schools money, the $250K, back into the general fund so we can use it for roads, and we would supplement it with CARES money because that's what it's for. Because what's happening is we don't get to use that money. The city is not allowed to deal with CARES and revenue. But if we took the Sitka Rural Schools money back and gave that money back in CARES to the schools, and I think we should give them even more, probably close to $1 million this year of CARES money, because we'll be talking about that later. The notion becomes, I don't want to see any money leave the general fund. For people who didn't hear it last meeting, the tax for the third quarter is going to be shy about $1.5 million for this third quarter. And coming up for the projected for next year, we may take a hit between 4.5 and $6+ million. And so to me, every penny counts. And I appreciate what everybody's doing. But the thing is, the city has to function. And all I see is, what's his name? Stan Silverman or Silverstein or whatever, who wrote The Caring Tree, The Giving Tree. The Giving Tree just kept giving and giving and giving until there was nothing left. And I think that because of this unique year, that I would zero out the nonprofit $50,000 and keep it in our fund, and then have those individuals go to the CARES Act and request funds. For example, with the Sitka Shark, the ham radio, I think that that is a perfect example of mitigation within safety. And it certainly fits the guidelines for everything that CARES is supposed to be about. And so I wrote 0 because at this time, money should not be leaving the general fund for nonprofits when we have nonprofit allocations, which are quite substantial. So I apologize for that, but I'm looking at what I consider bottom line, and if people don't think $50,000 is a lot, I think everybody please show me your tax returns, and we'll get some insight into what the value is.
Valerie, would you like to explain your position on allocating money, or?
She did.
I think I did, but, in these times, Mayor Paxton,
Okay.
with the uncertainty of where we are and with the unavailability of who already has received COVID funding through the
Right.
nonprofit, grant application period, I can't or, am not comfortable making a decision, and I think that we should keep as much in the general fund as, Dr. Green said, that we can, because, you know, even though everybody's campaigning says we should all be happy, we should be joyful, we should not acknowledge that we have problems because people watch our meetings. Reality is, we're all, going to be struggling. Thank you.
Right, no, thanks, Valerie, I just wanted to hear it again to be sure I just understood both positions. I think it's back to the assembly then for our discussion in
I have
terms
a
of.
question for Sarah, real quick. So Sarah, I know that this fund has gone through a lot of different permutations, but is there a statutory requirement that we have to do it now?
No, I don't believe so. The only document is this application that was, this
But
is the
we
only.
don't, it's not in the code, is
No,
what I'm
it's
saying,
not.
that we have to do
No,
it now.
it's just, no, it's not.
Okay.
It was something that was developed by a past
I know, we've
assembly.
gone
I don't
through it.
remember what year it
This
was,
is-
but,
this is-
and then it's just been included in the budget each year.
Okay.
And this is the process that's been
Yeah.
used since then.
So, when I did mine, part of the reason I didn't put any for Sitka counseling was also because of CARES Act, that I thought that it would fit in, and I was just informed that we do have a $15,000 contract with them to provide counseling from CARES Act. So, I think that's a legitimate thing that Valerie is saying, that we can't, on some of these, we just really can't make a good decision knowing, because we don't know yet. So what I'm going to suggest we do is that we postpone this till mid-November, around there, maybe.
I'd be okay with that.
I mean, just because then we would know who applied for CARES Act money. They don't have to reapply or anything, but then we would know who applied, who got CARES Act money, and then we can make a better decision.
Is that a
I like that
a formal
idea.
motion? Is that a formal motion?
I wasn't going to make a
motion
yet. Kevin has
Yeah, Kevin, please.
So one of the things that, my reaction to that is, the CARES Act money is meant for a very different thing. It's a reaction to what we're going through as a community, as a nation as a whole, and is meant to, to react to that. These dollars, though, are not. I mean, the CARES Act money has to be spent by the end of the year. These dollars are program dollars potentially for some of these
So would it help for expediency just to make a motion? Sarah?
Stephen, do you have anything to offer before we make a motion? Okay, you don't have to, I'm just asking of you.
I move to postpone this decision until the first meeting in November? That's
Second.
Public comment? I mean, this is a chance to speak if you,
And the public comment would be speaking to the motion to postpone.
right, right. Yeah, please. Again, it's to speaking to the motion to postpone, right?
Lynn Brandon, Sitka Trail Works. I appreciate your considering the application and your support in the past. We have come to depend on the timing of this each year, and it helps us in a grant-intensive period of time, which is in the fall. Then, that's what we use the money for, is staff time for writing these grants. And then, as Kevin said, it shows support for our organization to our grantors. So, thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm the treasurer for the Sitka Pregnancy Center. And this has been a pretty tough time for us. We have usually a big fundraiser in March. That didn't happen, and that brings in quite a bit of revenue. And then we have a pretty good time in July, 4th of July stuff to bring in revenue. So I would not be happy to see this put off until November, because we need to have some help right now. And the process that we're doing, trying to do the program, is these baby bathtubs filled with baby stuff to give over at church to new mothers and fathers when they have children. And that's one of the ways of getting people to know that we're here to help them, whatever circumstances that they might be in. So it's kind of an important thing to us. We're also, with this program, we'll be able to be seen more in the public, which might get people aware that we're here and be willing to donate more towards this fund. Thank you.
Your association, your company is?
Sitka Pregnancy Center.
Got it, thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, please.
I'm Michelle Friedman, and I'm here for Brave Heart Volunteers. Thank you very much for everybody's participation, and I definitely understand, how difficult the situation is for all of us, for all of Sitka, and I very much appreciate we have been able to apply for the CARES Act. We don't know yet whether what we're gonna get, or if anything, for Brave Heart, but I've just similar to what everybody else is saying and Kevin is saying, that we, usually make a good chunk of money from Alaska Day, and then we make some money on our Bowls event, and those things are not happening this year for us. We had a plan for a spring event that just couldn't happen because of COVID. So it is a really time that we do need this money coming in, and we've budgeted it, we've planned on it. We've, I guess, hoping that we were going to get some support from the city. So we also use that as a leverage, just like Kevin was mentioning. So I would very much encourage you to vote now, but I understand and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Comments on public?
Oh, there's somebody else.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Assembly members. For the record, my name is George Paul. I'm going to speak against the motion to delay till November 1st. November 1st, there'll be a different body sitting before us. There'll be new members there. And as the previous speakers, life is happening right now. Issues are happening right now. It's a political football, but people's lives are being affected. So I'd encourage you to vote on it this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Comments from the public?
Is the microphone on? Great. Thank you. I'm Rick Peterson from SAIL. Thank you for your time tonight. I also would encourage the Assembly to vote tonight. The CARES Act is really helpful, and we did apply for it at SAIL. But like Michelle said with Braveheart, we are affected financially by an inability to do the same fundraising that we have in previous years. It's just hard to get people together, and people are having difficulties with their employment and aren't donating as much to nonprofits. So that the CARES money that we hope to receive might offset some of the lost revenues from poor fundraising, and we would really rely on this grant to go forward. And we also use this grant to show support from the city to help us get other funds as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Other comments? Okay, back to the Assembly. Yeah,
I just wanted a couple of quick clarifications. So I'm advocating postponing, not canceling this. I mean, though it may look a little different at the time. I think the picture will be a bit clearer in 2 months. And so while I understand, I didn't think anybody who's on the list would be happy that we're talking about delaying it for a couple of months, but at the same time, we're not canceling it, at least, and just for the point of clarity, so the first meeting in December will probably be, what, around the 7th, give or take? So, November, I mean, yeah, sorry.
I think it's the 10th.
Okay, so, anyway, I think that this will allow us to have a better picture.
Yes, Mr. Leach.
I just want to reiterate what Mr. Christensen just stated, and I'm not taking either side on the issue. The motion is to postpone it, and we would have an opportunity to get a clearer picture. The risk with holding the vote tonight would be that the potential outcome could be a 0 vote. At least if it's extended a little bit, there's time to get some more information on CARES funding routes and who has applied and what would be available. Just wanted to throw that out, that just because we hold the vote tonight doesn't mean the vote would end up with funds being distributed. That's all.
Dr. Wayne. Okay, Valerie. Dr. Wayne, and then back to you, Valerie.
Let Valerie go first.
Valerie, you go first, Valerie. You betcha.
I prefer putting it off, even though I know it's critical for everybody. We all have emergencies. We all have a situation in our life that is COVID. In order to make a better informed decision, we need to have a bigger part of the picture, and it's just not happening for me right now. And if those people that want those grants have like budgeted in because it's like absolute guarantee, that's, in my mind, inappropriate, coming from somebody that has done accounting and bookkeeping for the better half of my 65-year life. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. Dr. Wayne.
Well, I'll in part reiterate what I had said before, but first, each of the people who got up basically said they couldn't fundraise, that they couldn't do this, they couldn't do that because of COVID, and that's called mitigation, and that is under CARES. So this is not money from one thing to another. You can certainly apply for that and receive it. One of the things we're going to do tonight is establish some of the rules for the, I'll say, second coming of CARES. And so, therefore, we can take in consideration what we have here. I think it is not appropriate to have, in essence, a two-track CARE give out, because you can make up that money through the second round of giving. That being said, I don't like the idea of giving money from the city that we don't have. I think that that is just not appropriate, and I think it sends the wrong message. And I appreciate how everybody needs it here, but I also said this is a unique time. We have a lot of money here which can be distributed, not out of the general fund, which we can't pull back to use for other things. And so I am still with the notion of not spending what we don't have, number one. And number two is that we can take into consideration your needs when we do the focus, which will be coming up after we probably do this motion. So I would like to make sure everybody's happy. But the thing is that the city has to be happy as well. Otherwise, we're just going to be Shel Silverstein's tree. And I don't think that's a place to be. So the city needs to survive, and we need to be starting to think how we're going to save money. And this is potentially $50,000, and I'll call that a good start because we can't use the CARES Act money. So I apologize because I agree in past times I voted for monies for everyone, but those were different times. And so I apologize. I support what everybody does here. But I also have to wear my assembly hat, and the assembly hat has fiscal responsibility on there. And this year, like I said, is unique and special. Thank you.
Yes, Stephen.
John, question for you in regards to offsetting. So in the application review that's coming up next, I believe that there were quite a few different offsetting factors in the amount of award that could possibly be given. So if the assembly awarded money tonight, would that be considered offsetting in the future for an award? And the reason I ask that is because I think it sounds to me members are concerned about too much in one area and not enough in another.
If I understand you correctly, you mean not receiving this, would their books, would their budget, would this be an offset of their budget in the next
No.
CARES
So
round? Is that
if
what
they
you-
do receive this money, that'll be stated on the application for the next round of CARES funding, and then possibly reduce the amount of award given for round 2 of CARES funding.
I don't believe so, but I might not be understanding your question correctly, because this is the stuff that's in the proposed CARES applications. Any money that they've received is all CARES related. Did you receive a sustainability grant in round 1? Did
understood.
you
Thank
receive
you.
CARES money from the feds? Those sort of questions.
Okay. This one's pretty hard for me, honestly. I understand everybody's points. I understand delaying the vote. I understand going forward with the vote now. I feel if we don't go forward with the vote tonight, I feel bad for the staff time and energy that's been put into this project. It's been budgeted. We knew that this was coming up. We would have had an opportunity during budget times to pull it back if we thought necessary. But we also didn't know the breadth of this COVID. So I don't know. Delaying it, and I guess I would be untruthful if I didn't say that I really wanted to be a part of this. And delaying it means that there's a chance I might not be. So I don't know. I think we have everything ready tonight. I think it's a budgeted amount. I'm even happy going with the averages with the zeros because then that reduces the overall amount, the award amount to, say $30,000 once you take out the one that did not receive four votes. And that would kind of be a compromise, but I don't know. Thank you.
I'm going to vote yes on this, and I know I filled out my thing, and I guess I kind of did it just because I kind of felt obligated in a way, and I saw the reactions of you folks when that motion was made or when we discussed it, and it touches me, and I'm not going to vote yes to postpone it because I think you're not giving value because you're giving extreme value. and very much appreciated. Some of the comments made, though, do ring true, that we have a lot of unknowns, and these are very uncertain times. You can apply for the second round of the CARES Act grant funding, and this is simply a postponement. I know it's not ideal, but this is not, in my mind, meant to be mean-spirited in any way. And I apologize for the surprise, and I hope you continue keeping on, because you're adding real value to the community, but I have to support postponing it for the time being. That's going to be my vote.
Other comments from the Assembly? Yes, Dr. Wade.
When it was mentioned that this has already been budgeted and so forth, Mr. Leach's words echo in my ear that he went to staff and said knock 10% off, and that was because that was budgeted too. And so I think there has been a lot of, I'll say, mitigating going on, and so I think that we need to mitigate as well, even though we've come this far, but it was never a question. That's why I voted the way I did.
Tough issue. Any other questions? Call for the vote.
Okay, so on the motion to postpone the award of the FY21 General Fund nonprofit grants until the first meeting in November, which is November 10th, Mayor Paxton?
No.
Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Mr. Knox?
No.
Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbeiß?
No.
Dr. Wien?
This is zugzwang, because if I say no, then it can go to a vote tonight. If I say yes, I know I'm not supposed to do this, but
Yeah, you're
it's
not.
I'm coming up to the end of my meeting, so throw me out. And if I say yes, then we postpone it, which is something I don't want at all.
All right. I'll call the Assembly member back to order. Kevin will be here soon. Okay, where are we on the vote? Has Valerie voted yet?
No. Valerie, are you on? Let me make sure that I can't tell. Oh, maybe that's Valerie? Okay, here we go. Valerie, are you on? Oh my gosh. I love technology. Let's see, she's on, but no audio. Okay. I'm just gonna do this.
Hello?
All right, Valerie, so I have you on my iPhone.
Okay.
Okay, so, it's now your opportunity to vote. The motion is to postpone the award until the first meeting in November, which is November 10th. So,
Yes, my
yeah.
vote is yes.
Okay, to postpone, all right. So the motion to postpone passes 4-3.
Passes for,
I just stay on the phone?
It passed 4-3? I'm asking.
Correct.
Yes, the motion to postpone passed.
Okey dokey. We are now at item B, discussion of the next part of the distribution of the CARES 2 money. John, you want to walk us through this?
Thanks, Mayor. And Melissa, do you mind coming up too? 'Cause we'll probably have to answer some questions at the same time here. So as you remember from Tuesday night, we anticipated, we actually have available about $1.8 million from Category 1, and we are about to commit around 3 to 3.1 million in the first round of business grants. So I expect to have available around $3.8 million to allocate to other programs. My recommendation is to allocate $3 million more to Category 2 to do a Phase 2 business relief or nonprofit relief, recovery, and sustainability grant. I'm sure you had the opportunity to read through the draft applications, but I'll start out with the reasons why there are two different applications and kind of briefly go into why there are some different thresholds, and then I'll have some questions for you all to kind of help us out with if we need to make some changes to these applications or amounts. So first off, on the for-profit side, the business side, the goal of our program was to target the businesses that had the most harm and the businesses that have the most economic impact in the community. We used that, the two measures we had for that was revenue loss to determine their harm and impact on the community. We decided to offer some sort of subsidy for the number of full-time employees or equivalent FTEs, of Sitka FTEs, from this same period last year. We used that as a measure. On the nonprofit side, it's a little more subjective, but there are some measurements in there. The goal of the nonprofit program was to keep these entities, to maintain capacity, to be able to continue to provide services, and the ones that provide the most benefit to the community. It's hard to measure some of those things with numbers, so that application is a very subjective type application. What I will draw your attention to is that we've looked at some other communities and reached out to other communities as well to find out how they ran their programs. And Juneau is one that we kind of narrowed in on. In fact, they didn't run it themselves as a municipality. They had what's their version of CEDA, some Juneau Economic Development organization ran the business side, and then they had what would be similar to they had a granting organization, I think is their community foundation. They ran the nonprofit side. They did the analysis and ran the applications and then provided the recommendations to the assembly to distribute the funds. On the business side, I had some numbers from them. I think they allocated $8.5 million to their Phase 2 of their program, and their entry requirements were 20% loss in revenue. I don't remember if it was 20 or 25% year-over-year loss in revenue, and they capped the grant amount at $99,000. Before the program was over, they had $10.5 million in requests for an $8.5 million program. So we decided to lower the cap of ours to $50,000, and the entry requirement for revenue loss is at 40% year over year. Because like I said, we want to target the businesses that had the most impact, and then again are going to provide the most economic impact back to the community if we're able to assist them. The nonprofit side, it's a very different model, and I almost want to let you talk about this because of your nonprofit experience, but it's a very different model. They don't have sales revenues, just concrete data like the businesses have. So we needed to measure that a little bit differently. And the proposed loss in revenue is 25% for the nonprofits, and then the evaluations from there are are very subjective. You'll see in the guidelines here, they had some categories on, it was based on your revenues, it was based on your services. And then they asked some questions about what other sources of funds did you receive, whether it's from the feds or some other CARES monies that were available. And we also asked about any City of Sitka CARES funding that they've received to take into consideration. So more hard math on the business side versus some subjective analysis on the nonprofit side. But what I'd like to point out is that we decided to cap the amount for the nonprofits and for the for-profits. We want to leave those both at a proposed $50,000 cap. That will be the max grant available. I don't necessarily want to pull a pot of money aside and say this is dedicated to the nonprofits, but for budgetary and just kind of analysis purposes, our nonprofit community makes up around 15% of our economic sector, or they make up about 15% of the sector of our economy. So I would expect to see around 12 to 15% of the funding being requested going to the nonprofit community. So that would equate to between around $450,000. So I expect to see about $500,000 of the $3 million go to the nonprofit community. Again, I don't have any intent to say this is your pot, use all of it. It would still be pulling from the same pot of money, the full $3 million, if that's what we decide to allocate to this program. But we would have two very different, or not very different, but two different applications and two different groups of people analyzing those applications. For the business applications, you know, like I said, this is hard math, so it's easy to come in, throw in a spreadsheet, evaluate it, and mark some boxes and say this is how much you get. And we would do that with the staff that we have right now, just as we did in phase one. Phase two, I don't think, just like we were going to do tonight, I don't think the Assembly, I could be wrong, would want to hear every one of the nonprofit applicants come up and make their case for a portion of CARES funding. So I'm recommending that we use one of our granting organizations in town to review the applications, not approve the applications, review the applications, bring it to us with a recommended amount, and then just as we've done with the for-profit ones, we give it the thumbs up and bring it to the Assembly for final approval. So am I missing anything?
No, the only thing I just want to clarify is that we're not increasing this total category by 3 million. It will actually only increase by 1, so it'll go from 5 million to 6 million. We've spent about 3, or
Right.
will have spent about 3. And so really that would pull from leftover money from the utility subsidy.
Right.
Questions or comments?
John, can
My
I-
hand is up.
Yeah.
As part of the working group, I would like to cue in too, because I think we've been going back and forth, right, John, about whether to separate the amounts. And I guess I was maybe misunderstood. My understanding, my hope was to indeed separate them, because if you're going to have different like thresholds, 25 or 40, to be fair, I wouldn't mind seeing, say, 450,000 for the nonprofits and the relative about 2.5 million for the for-profits, because this way, because the nonprofits, it's more subjective, and I'd think the for-profits should be very objective. So if we split that according proportionally, about roughly 15%, 13 to 15%, I think that would be fair. That's kind of where I'm sitting.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page, and it's kind of hard to express this. I don't want to give a separate allocation. I would almost consider it a not to exceed, maybe. But if we take a separate allocation and put it in one spot, then it could be viewed that there's $500,000 here or $450,000. Use all of the $450,000. I want the applications to be reviewed based on the application, but I want to have a target to drive to, and it's hard to say how that would work.
Valerie has her hand up. Valerie?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I spoke at our meeting 2 days ago about how my preference is that we have anything we have left over to go to the people. Yes, I know businesses and nonprofits are suffering. Everybody's suffering. But there are a lot of people that are still having problems with paying utility bills, and that seemed to be the way that was quickest to distribute the funds. And if you really think about it, those businesses and nonprofits, they're not going to survive without the people that can't pay their bills or can't donate or whatever. So if we did another subsidy for residential and business people that maybe were excluded in the first round that had 2 businesses or 3 businesses, I think that would be the best way to go for me. Thank you.
Can I ask a question of Valerie before? Valerie, would your idea be to allocate a portion of the 3 million, or how would you control the amount to do what you just asked to do?
Mayor Paxton, I don't have a good answer because unfortunately we as assembly members have been left in the loop or whatever, waiting to see who, how much, and whatever has happened. But I do believe that there have been a lot of people that applied for the utility grant, which requires very little paperwork and less time to distribute than the business grants or whatever. And so my thoughts are that it's just a matter of economics. We've got to keep those people that support the businesses here. And another utility subsidy would not harm anybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Dr. Wayne.
Am I correct in saying that what is to be distributed is $3.8 million?
Million remaining
Okay.
between Category 1 and Category 2.
Okay. My suggestion is this. I agree with Valerie that we need a second round of utility because I think that's appropriate. It goes back to, I'll say, the people. And the way I would do that is $1 million back to utility. That's Category 1. Category 2, I would give $2 million. So we have $800,000 left. That money, $800,000, I would give to the school district with the stipulation that they return the Secure Rural Schools money, which would give them an additional $550,000 to utilize. I think, under a normal year, I'd probably say cut the budget, but there are a lot of things within the district which are totally out of their control at this particular moment. And if we can, through CARES, help boost it, especially after this meeting, I think it would be appropriate. And that's how I would allocate the $3.8 million.
Okay, just so we keep track of the numbers, you are only going to put 3 million, so is there anything wrong with allocating the whole 3.8 million? John?
The 3.8 million where? Putting it all towards?
You said we have $3.8 million left,
Correct.
but you only wanted to use 3 million for Category 2. What Dr. Ween just described uses 3.8 million.
Correct.
Is there anything wrong with doing that in terms of from where you sit, using the whole 3.8 million if we allocate it to utilities, business nonprofits, and schools?
There's nothing wrong with that. It just means, 1 million for we could do another round of utilities. Potentially, we have to find a way. I know Melissa doesn't like this one, so I do want her to address the utilities thing.
It also means that we lose 800,000 of flexibility. By the way, I sort of like the proportion. That sort of works for me, but I just want to be sure that if we do the whole 3.8, that we're not going to leave ourselves in harm's way yet.
As I understand it, we can't do the utilities again because we essentially told the feds, okay, we're giving them 3 months' worth, and they will spend it by the end of the year. If we did another round, that would, obviously, it would be pushing them into next year, which gives past the deadline. So we would have some issues there with with the feds. Am I correct?
Yes, there are absolutely some utility account holders whose monthly bill, the $1,000, would be eaten up in 3 months or less. But there's a lot of utility bills out there that are quite low. And, if we give them another subsidy, we've already given them a subsidy that in some cases is pushing the boundaries of covering the COVID period. Another one, in many cases, is going to cover their utility bill well into the new year. So that's where, we wrote up a memo that John, Brian, and I all signed, kind of justifying why we believe that the amounts and the, the program that we put together are legitimate. But we're worried enough about it that we wrote that memo. Just to kind of document that. The restrictions around this funding they're onerous.
Well, let me just say something to you and to the public. We listened to Senator Sullivan and Don Young yesterday, our congressman, and they say the entire Congress is adamant that they got to extend the period beyond the end of the year, because if you're doing the distribution the way we are, in a responsible way, everybody's in the same boat. They need some extra time. And so, as we sit here and try to do what's best for our town, I think it's a reasonable bet to say that we'll be able to extend the time beyond the year. Now, having said that, I think the utility subsidy should be targeted within this calendar year. I'm talking about both sides of my mouth. Yeah.
As far as the utility subsidy, we'll call it approximately 3 months. And I'm sure, I don't know what your report capabilities are on your financial, but I'm sure you can pick up those people who will spend X amount in this time and have a threshold, and those who will totally gobble it up. And I don't see why a little data mining cannot be used to return this, again, to ratepayers. And I think that that's important. And I don't know what your financial package is, but I'm sure that you have an idea of who is paying X amount, who will run out in 3 months if you gave them 1,000, and those who will use it up before 3 months. And so to me, it's just a question of will. And I think utilities are very important for people in general. So if you have the will, then let's do it, because what people pay is known. We get that little thing on our utility bill, which has all those bar graphs and everything. So we do have a real idea of usage and cost. So,
Actually, I was just letting you know, Sarah told me that Valerie would like to speak.
Yep, okay. Valerie, please.
Thank you. I think we're all a bit mistaken in that it's not just a 3-month period. It could be 6 or a 9-month period. And when we gave residential ratepayers the $1,000 credit on their utility bill, that may be paid for 3 months. But we all know that this craziness is not going to be over, and there are a lot of people that are struggling very much. I don't think it would be out of line to extend it, in the sense that, if you think $1,000 for a 3-month utility bill is probably $333 or $334. Most people that pay a minimum utility bill, which does include garbage, water, sewer, are paying that. So my thought is we need to support those people that are having a tough time. And if they choose to apply, It shows they really need it. By the same token, I don't think we really did a great bang-up job of getting the word out there, because as it was coming to the date or deadline in July, or July 31st, I still had family members that had no clue that they could apply for it. And we are all getting emails from people saying, yeah, well, I didn't get this, I didn't get that. And I still am not clear as to how some people got mailed the applications after the deadline. And I think the utility subsidies would not be a hard one to justify in an audit. Thank you.
Other comments, Ms. Emma?
Yeah, just one quick comment on the utility thing. I don't have a problem if we can get away with it, throwing some over there. I think it's interesting, Dr. Ween, that you've changed your tune on that, because you voted against the utility supplicate. Anyway, let's talk about the actual.
You forgot the reasons.
Yeah, you just, anyway. Talk about the applications and things. I have to say, I don't like the 50K cap. Because we've got a few businesses, and when I say businesses, I mean, I don't like differentiating between nonprofits or for-profit. They're all businesses, they all employ people here in town, they've all been hurt. Just a few where this really could make the difference. I understand that I may be in a minority on that, but I think that we can, if we go over the amount, then we dial it back. I guess if we take some more to utilities, maybe that makes more sense. A couple other points on that. I'm not really crazy about the requirement that they have been current with the city with their bills on March 1st. If we are requiring them to be current when they apply. Because by definition, if they're current now, that means they've caught everything up. And I don't have a problem saying, you know, obviously as long as we're current now when they put the application in, I think that means we've gotten all of our money. There's also on their requirement that they not be in bankruptcy. And as my brother, the bankruptcy attorney, will tell me many times, there's lots of different kinds of bankruptcy. If they're in Chapter 7, trying to survive and still in business, still running, this grant may make the difference between them coming out of bankruptcy and not. And if they come out of bankruptcy, then we just saved a business and the jobs that go with it. What else? And the other thing is, I mean, we have all this language in there about that they have to spend it by the end of the year. However, they also can use it to, I guess, repay themselves for stuff spent earlier. And so it seems very confusing to me. And that if they don't spend it by the end of the year, they've got to give it back. And I assume we have that in there to keep the feds happy. But I could see a lot of confusion in that when people are reading it. And so I think we need to make it very clear that if they can use it for money they've already spent, that we make it very clear to them in big, bold, red letters. And we can quietly, and explain to them why we had to say if you don't spend it all. Because I found it a bit confusing when I was reading it. I think I knew what you were trying to say, but I'm not sure everybody else would. It seems, I don't understand why we have all the requirements on the forms about what their computer expenses are, what their rent expenses are, what their debt is. If they have sent in their 2019 sales or amounts and their 2020, and there's a 40 or 25% depending on what kind it is, that's really all we need to know as far as I'm concerned. And again, I'm trying to ease the burden on the guys trying to fill out these forms. I mean, these aren't professional grant writers that, I know we look at this form and say, oh, it looks pretty straightforward, but it may not be to everybody who's doing it. I mean, I can't imagine a simpler form than the utilities one, and we ran into some problems with that. So anything we can do to simplify it legally, I think we should. Kind of have the similar issue with that we say we might publish everybody who gets it. I'm not crazy about that. Maybe we have to because of transparency laws, but it just seems like airing dirty laundry in public. if we, if they are in a situation where they have to, maybe everybody's part of it and nobody's really afraid to say COVID has hurt them, but I just wish we didn't have to do that.
Okay, so we get things done tonight.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm proposing we do.
If you look at the numbers for Category 1, we spend $2.7 million. So if we only give them $1 million, round numbers, it's a third of the allocation. And so before it was 1,000, so now it's 300. So I think that most people in Sitka can spend in utilities $300 over 3 months. So I don't think it's going to be much of a pull for anyone when you look at the numbers. So I'm still very much for utilities. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for allowing me.
What I want to do here is we're either going to approve these forms or tell precisely what we want the administrator to do so he can get the dang things out. And also, I didn't swear. We got to get these permitting things done so we can get the action out to get stuff in. So I want to get the forms approved or telling John what he wants to do. My final comment is, if we do a utility thing, we already have a form for that, which is pretty straightforward. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I just want to get this done, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the allocation of the money for for utilities, businesses, and nonprofits. Is that reasonable?
Restated in a sentence.
Pardon me?
Could you restate that in one sentence? So you just want to look at the forms now?
Approve the forms.
Okay, approve the forms.
And then we will approve how we allocate the money based on our discussing utilities, nonprofits, and your idea of the school district.
Okay.
It's my mic's fault. Okay. Is that,
Well,
yes,
let's
Steve?
hear what Steve and then John, because.
John, as part of this utility discussion goes back to the definition of spent. I know a while ago we were discussing if the municipality expending the funds to an entity is spent or if the entity actually has to expend them. So does us writing a check, is that spent? Because then if so, the utility might work. If that's not spent, then I don't know.
If you want my opinion, there's 3 phases of money. There's appropriated, committed, obligated. Obligated is spent. But I think in our world, once we commit the funds to one of the programs, is that not spent?
So
Yes, I think we need to assume that's the case. Listen, the entire Congress is saying we've got to extend the damn, got to extend the money. So, and the fact is, communities like ourselves have a very rigorous process, and you're doing the same thing. They're all having the same problem, so when we get it, I think it's obligated. And that's a standard, in my view, we need. But I'm just one assembly member. Yeah, go ahead, Melissa.
I think in the case of the utilities, we can easily have that applied to the account. I think where we have to justify it to our auditors is that it's addressing the need within the period from March 1st to December 30th. And that is, if we have someone, there are actually a number of accounts out there where, you have a $150 bill a month. They probably don't have electric heating, but those accounts, right now, we can justify the amount as being incurred between March and December. If we add to it, it's going to be harder. And it's still gray. Because at the end of the day, this is economic relief. My concern is that if we push it out, it could be perceived as being revenue replacement because this money is not actually going out to people. It's an internal adjustment reducing the balances.
But Melissa, that's not the $150 a month account. It's the person spending $300 or $400 a month that we want to get in. If people come in, they've already got enough money to pay for the end of the year, but they don't get it. So we just give it to those people who haven't got enough money to pay for electricity through the end of the year.
What if we just said that if it's still anything left at the end of the year, it goes back?
That puts us in a spot though, then we're in a jam to either spend it or we have to send it back to the Fed.
Look, I'm not trying to be a jerk here, but no, because I want the assembly, if we can, to agree on guidance on the permitting and let them figure these things out. I think this is a pretty simple math problem, actually, on utilities. The tougher one is gonna be the business nonprofits. But anyway, we need to agree, I think, on the, what I don't wanna understand here, what I don't wanna do is lose another 2 weeks of getting to the point where we could have people applying for the money. That's my rationale. Okay, yes.
I have some important things I need to hit. $2 million isn't going to go far for businesses. I mean, we heard loud and clear in the first round that the max grant was $10,000, and that was a drop in the bucket for some people. We had a very simple process and low grant amounts, and we spent almost $3.1 million. If we only have $2 million to allocate to this program again, and if there's already talk of increasing the $50,000 cap to higher or reducing the requirements, the threshold for revenue loss, we might as well just bump up what we've already issued. But I think we all know that if that happens, the people that we're hurting the most are just, their drop in the bucket is just going to be a little bit bigger of a drop in the bucket. The intent, as I said, the goals from the beginning was to target the ones with the biggest economic impact, or the biggest impact to the community, and the ones that were harmed the most. No doubt that the utility grant is needed, and I think it's a great idea, and I think we can look into doing that. But I would just say that we've already spent 3.1 on a fairly simple business and nonprofit grant program. I don't know if $2 million is going to help out that much more, and it would be a lot of work going into an application for really just getting a small amount again.
Is there any
That's just my
disagreement or
opinion.
guidance on the applications that the administrator recommends for people to apply for business and nonprofit grants?
I just had a thought. I mean, it's so if we're gonna divert a substantial portion to utilities, so that it's $2 million, say, and taking into account what John just said, could we just proportionally give everybody who got the first round a bit more money? So if you got a $1,000 grant, you would get an extra, I don't know, $300 or whatever the math works out to. And if you got the $5,000, you get an extra $1,500. And if you got the $10,000, an extra $2,000 or $2,500. And then it's out the door. There's no applications. There's no done. We'd have it out in a couple weeks.
Yeah, Kevin.
So I've been like listening to everything and trying to digest it and come up with alternatives as the discussions unfolded. So I am part of the working group. It's not some special cool thing that we all love to do. It's a ton of work, mostly on behalf of the staff. But yeah, I'm twice a week. I'm running down there when I don't really have a lot of time to give. And this is not easy, as someone said in there. They were surprised on how hard it is to spend money. The race, we're getting close to the deadline. We're throwing out all these random ideas at the last minute. I would ask the Assembly to consider going with what we have recommended, not because we think it's the best and awesomest thing and your ideas are no good. We don't have much time. We don't have time to rehash and come up with all these ideas. I think that we should go with this, spending the $300,000 or $3 million, I'm sorry. I would like to have tacit approval on both of these and to be able to move forward. That's because we have to just decide. If we're trying to, and Dr. Wayne, I like your ideas on paper, but then I was about to go for it, but I was like, wait a minute, we don't have time to redo all this stuff. I mean, every little thing takes, you'd be amazed at how much work it takes just to do one little thing. I'm just asking that you would consider just scrapping all these ideas and go with what we presented.
Steve?
That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay, Sarah, as a heads up, I'm going to make a motion here. So if you want to grab that writing stick. So I move to approve both applications and the suggested allocation amounts given to us by the administrator.
Public comment? Public comment?
Thank you once again, Mr. Mayor and Assembly members. I would ask for clarification as to what the allocations are from listening to the discussion that's going forward. But I would say, just like you didn't swear, Mr. Mayor, I had to refrain from clapping when I heard Valerie's suggestion about the utilities. For my household, when I started objecting to the utility increase in November, our utility bill was $410. You add that 16% to it, it's going to be $477. So a $1,000 second utility assist won't make it to January, so that wouldn't be an issue for us. I strongly believe, and like I say, the goal I've been working toward is trying to hopefully nudge the group to look at the individual on the street. The majority do not have email. The majority do not have internet. And there are a lot of individuals that missed the deadline because they didn't know they had the deadline. So that's why I say it's important that everybody that is making these decisions for us be in the room and talk to the people that it's affecting. So I'm not certain if it speaks to the motion, but I think it speaks directly to the strongest emotion in the community. Thank you.
Other comments from the public? Okay, this motion makes two things. Approve the application forms and the allocation. And if we want to talk about the allocations, I think we can do that and modify, because your allocation is 3 million for profits and businesses, right? So we could either do that, or we could, he says he's got 3.8 million. If we wanted to, we could work those numbers towards some for the utility amount. But
that would have to be made with an amendment to the motion.
Right, that would be easy, so. Okay.
Yeah, I just say, I think, I only got about halfway through my problems with the forms, not problems, but thoughts on it. But Kevin makes a really good point. I'm sure we all could make up a nice long list of things we like or don't like about the forms, but it would work. And I think we can't let the perfect be the enemy of done. And so right now, at least, I plan to vote for this. If we want to do another vote about the utility thing, that's different. But I mean, but as far as the forms, I can live with them.
Okay. Yeah.
I have no problems with the forms either, so I don't think anybody on the assembly has particular problems with the forms. I'm very happy that these will be transparent and will be able to be seen and reviewed by members of the public, just as the payroll protection plan was, et cetera. So these are public monies, and they are, I hope, will be covered under transparency. The interesting thing is, and now this is dealing directly to Mr. Mosier, there are many mouths to feed. And I think that we need to take that in consideration. And part of the job of the Assembly is to assure a reasonable distribution. As far as it is going to business nonprofit, I recognize their important contributions, but so does flesh and blood. And so it is not some enormous complication to say, give some money to the utilities and give some money to the schools with the stipulation to get some back for our general fund. That is not very complicated. And I'm sorry if any businesses are so tenuous that that the difference in $1 million divided over a number of cases is going to make them whole. I beg to have some proof of that. So I think there are many mouths to feed. I think in trying to keep it simple, utilities, school, business, nonprofit. That's not, let me see, that's 4. 1 + 1 + 1 + 1. And that's not very complicated.
My alternative would be, we change the amount from 3 million to 3.8 million, and include an opportunity for a second round of utility.
We would have to move some to phase 1.
Well,
Utilities would need to be moved to phase 1.
I don't give a damn on phase 1 or phase. The point is that people can apply for utilities if they needed to get.
So then how about someone make an amendment amendment to the motion to add 800,000 for a second round of utility subsidies? Would that work?
If we're at 3 million right now with what it is, we can just do another motion immediately after this.
Yeah, I'd be more happy with that being a separate motion after this one. I think it muddies it.
Go ahead, Steve.
So I have to say one thing on this. I generally like to keep business and assembly separate, but in this instance, I feel businesses are getting beat up, perhaps some unnecessarily during this process. And I want to use a personal example of how CARES Act money, if and depending on the amount I receive from the city, is going to help people within the city. And in my instance, we're going to be utilizing that money to hire someone during the holiday season. I hope holiday season's going to be busy. I hope that there's some revenue there, and that those funds will allow me to bring on staff people. So this isn't an issue of big business owner getting rich off of CARES Act money. This is an issue of being able to pay citizens in our community to go to work, which I think we all understand that more employment is needed in town right now. There are people that are underemployed and unemployed. So I felt businesses were just getting pretty beat up on this, and I just wanted to show that point that in my instance anyway, and I believe in other instances, this money is going back into the community. It's not simply lining the pockets of big business owners here.
My hand's up.
Valerie?
Many of us probably that are sitting at the assembly table are familiar with businesses, I hope. My husband and I have had several. We still have a few that are turning a profit, and I'm certainly not trying to discriminate against those businesses. However, for those businesses to keep going, we need to make sure that, once again, the people that are having to pay the bills, that are trying to stay here because they love Sitka for what it is, have the means to do that. And the businesses, nonprofits, all those, there are have been so many options open to that. My husband and I have only taken one from the city of Sitka for a grant of $5,000, as I disclosed not too long ago, because we have a great drop in revenue. But you venture to gain or you venture to lose, and I just think it's more important to provide for the people that are really struggling, your 9 to 5, Joe, Jane, six-pack or whatever. And I think the utility subsidy is the best thing. And yeah, maybe more to the businesses. And I disagree with what anybody said about, oh, it's only this much, it's only that much for a utility bill. I will bring my utility bills to the next assembly meeting. Thank you.
So as I hear the motion, the discussion is, or the unknown with our current thing is, motion, we don't deal with the utilities. But if we approve this motion for $3 million, then we can come back and make another motion for $800,000 for utilities. Is that?
I would be willing, once we vote, I would be willing to make a motion for $800,000 for the utilities.
Because of the motion is twofold. One, approve the forms, which I would vote yes for, but two, the $3 million I would vote no for. So again, zugzwang, I'm caught in the middle of, how to vote, because this is a confusing, potentially opposing vote for at least this sitting assembly individual. So if you want to bifurcate the vote, then I think that's the best way to do. But I have to now vote no, and I'm not voting no against the forms. I'm just put in a tough position, and I don't want my night to be
Friendly
taken.
amendment to take the, to just take the amount of money out now?
Actually, I think Steve's the one who made the motion.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry, Steve.
I'm happy with my motion the way it is, but thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can we call for the vote?
Yeah, call for the vote.
Okay, so the motion before you is to approve both of the applications and the suggested allocation amounts as provided by the administrator. Mr. Knox?
Yes.
Mayor Paxton?
Yes.
Dr. Ween?
No.
Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
Ms. Nelson?
No.
Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
And Mr. Eisenbeis?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-2.
Yep. Now we need to deal with.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to allocate or set aside whatever the verb, which would be $800,000 for another round of utility subsidy, which would obviously be, the portions of which would be adjusted. It wouldn't be the original $1,000.
Can we clarify if that's residential or business?
I would say residential.
Residential.
I would like that,
Yeah,
yeah.
people, I agree. I think that's your intention, right, Valerie?
Yes.
Right.
However, I think more in line of everything that's going on, businesses could use more too, because I don't know who's doing the numbers, but my utility bills are a heck of a lot higher than what I've been paying. Thank you.
But businesses can also use it on the first motion. Okay, public comment on this? Yeah.
Me.
Sure.
Thank you once again, Mr. Mayor and Assembly members. For the record, my name is George Paul. Obviously, I speak in favor of the motion. I would add the caveat, maybe not have a ceiling for it, but a standard of 100% of the individuals that need utility assistance be assisted. And if that dollar amount be greater than $800,000, then I think the city should reallocate part of $3 million from the businesses to cover the 100% of your population base, so that they could have a comfortable livelihood. Secondly, as I stated, there are a lot of people that do not have access to the internet, radio or that are homeless. When you're homeless, those aren't items of concern. So maybe having an information booth in the stores or by Crescent Harbor, where people that have no place else to go hang out information that this is available to them so that we could cover it. But to summarize, I would vote in favor. I would ask that you vote in favor of this and consider not having a cap, but the concept of 100% of those citizens that need assistance get the assistance. Thank you.
Back to the assembly, comments?
Just real quick, I'm going to vote yes for this, but as John mentioned to us, he got 0 responses for the homeless daycare. And so after we do this, or maybe we just make an amendment, I'd like to throw at least, say, 200,000 to make this an even million at, since we didn't get any responses and it doesn't appear to be anything on the horizon that will be.
That's a new motion, I'm sorry.
I understand, but that's.
Then point of order.
And so if you are talking to me about staying on point, Jesus. So anyway, I just making that point that I think we can bring it up.
Well,
Can we make it, can we make an amendment to that?
Yeah, I move to amend this to add 200,000 from the, that was allocated, what phase was that? Or what? Category 3.
yeah,
Second?
before, yeah. Comments from the public?
So there's an amendment.
They want to try to add $200,000 for something that's not yet known. Okay, that's what they want to do. Yeah,
Category 3.
No,
but it's not yet known, Tor. And there may be differences here in a month that would cause us to take other actions. But yes, go ahead.
So I seconded it. I think it's worth, while we do have a contingency we can pull from if we end up using that 200,000. So, I mean, I don't want to bank on it, but
Yeah.
I really don't think we'll find it, so I think it's worth.
Kevin Knox.
So the remainder of that $200,000 is coming out of the housing, out of category 3 in the housing lot. Of that portion that we put towards the potential or the RFI request for the homeless services, and we didn't get any responses to it. One of the discussions that we were having within the working group was actually moving that allocation back over to the housing relief, because that went live tonight, actually, and in the first 2 hours of that being live for residents of the city of Sitka, there have been over 40 applications to it already. Calls were already being made to the 200 plus applicants who received the state money for housing relief. So I would actually anticipate that we're going to have more than what we already allocated, more need than what we already allocated into that pool. So that 250 really, in my mind, should just be saved in category 3 under housing relief. So I wouldn't be in favor of moving that towards.
Well, I guess I can just withdraw my.
It's kind of a similar kind of thing.
Raise
That's-
your hand.
I can withdraw my second.
It's up, whatever you want to do.
I withdraw my second.
I'll second it.
Yeah, okay. Valerie, did you have a comment?
I raised my hand and I supported that motion to put more towards utility relief. However, since the mover and the seconder removed it, I am
No,
out of order.
it's been passed.
No, I withdrew mine, but then Steve
Steven.
seconded it, so we still have a second.
Okay,
And just for clarification, so we're adding $200,000 to the $800,000 to make $1 million available for residential utility subsidization, is that correct?
and we're taking it from
Okay.
category 3
Right.
and moving it to category 2, right? Which is sort of significant, because category 3 is a pretty important thing. Yes, Dr. Wayne.
I realize this seems, it seems like the theme of late is chess. This seems like some kind of chess game. where you're taking money and moving it all over the court, all over the board. My notion is that I don't know what the problems are within the homeless community and their inability to present funds or a proposal. But that doesn't mean that we as an assembly can't assist them in some meaningful way. As I drove at about noon today somewhere, there was a line outside of the Salvation Army, and these needs are not going to go away. And to remove that $200,000 as it is a chess piece, when we can figure it out, and it can be as simple as this, that we can buy food cards from C-Mart, from Lakeside, and deal with it as a proportion number as to how many meals various organizations give, and then give those cards out to let them buy within the next 3 months food. I mean, this is not going to go away. We're not going to build a shelter. We're not renting rooms at the Sciatica, but we can deal with things like food and other types of things. And because they're not meeting the need does not mean that we should not assist them in some very, very meaningful way. This money was allocated for them, and it needs to stay with them. I certainly support money for utilities, and I'll close with this, is that if you didn't listen to the school board tonight, they're going to have a $750,000 shortfall in budget and maybe $1 million shortfall for mitigation. And where do you think they're going to come for that money? That's going to be our general fund. And that's why I suggested giving additional funding for them, because at the end of the day, there's going to be a bill to be paid. So homeless, don't forget them. We already have the money. I think it's a wonderful gesture. They need help. Let's do it. Let's be creative. And so does the school.
Call for a motion on the, call for a vote on the second, on the motion. Pardon me?
Valerie,
Oh,
do you
yeah,
have some
Valerie,
comments?
please.
You know, I understand where we're going with all this. All of us want to do what's best for the community. My husband and I donate halibut to Salvation Army. I'm concerned that not everybody knows how much everybody else gives and how much we care. And I just, I'm very concerned about giving more when we don't know what we really have, and we won't know what we really have until probably another month or so with all the COVID stuff. So, yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Call for the vote on the.
Well, could you repeat the motion before you call for the vote?
Please, you repeat the motion, the second of the motion.
So the amendment
Amendment.
to the amendment is to add $200,000 to the $800,000 that has been stated for utility subsidization to make $1 million available.
Call for the vote.
Dr. Ween?
No.
Mr. Knox? Mr. Eisenbeis?
Yes.
Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
Mayor Paxton?
No.
Ms. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 4-3. So now you're back.
So we now have a motion on the table for utility subsidy of $1 million. Okay, we ready for a vote on this?
I think so.
Call for a vote.
That's my mic. We're allocating $1 million for another
Utility subsidization.
round of utility subsidization for
Residential
residential.
utility.
Thank you,
Right,
Steve.
residential. Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Dr. Ween?
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbeis?
Yes.
Ms. Nelson?
Yes.
Mr. Knox?
Yes.
Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
And Mayor Paxton?
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0.
All right. Listen, this was a worthwhile discussion tonight. It was complicated. Whether we came up with the right solution, time will tell. But this is what we get paid to do, and we took a tough issue, and we're here. We are where we are. Okay, we're now. Yes, sir, Steve.
I just want to say thank you to the CARES Act Working Group. I know we completely turned everything that you've been working for upside down tonight. And please don't take that as a indication that I don't care about the work that you're doing and the information that you present to us. So please don't take that from me. I still value all of the work that you put in. I understand that it is quite significant. Thank you.
Yeah, it's more than just 3 people, about 10 or 15 people. All right. Pardon me?
Stephen, thank you for saying that, and I just want to echo what Kevin Mosier had said earlier too. Staff have put in a great deal of time and thought into this and really brought some serious expertise to this all. John, you've done an outstanding job in creating a lot of this and coordinating it. I also wanted to say thanks to Gary White and Robin Sherman for their expertise that they've brought to the table. We wouldn't have gotten halfway through a lot of this stuff without their voices at the table as well. So thank you to both of them.
I think Rob Allen has been an assist as well. Thank you, Kevin, for those wise comments.
Can I add the tribe into that as well?
Yeah,
Lisa Gassman has been in with every one of them, and we get to learn a lot from their programs, and they've assisted us with our programs as well.
It's been a really important community effort. You bet. Okay, we're now persons to be heard on anything on or off the agenda. Yes, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Assembly members. I told my employer I have to resign and head back north. There are 6 other individuals that I know that are in the same boat that I am. I would like to
George, just relax and speak. Thank you. Yeah, no, we understand.
I would like to thank the Assembly and the working group for all the time you put into it. I did not mean to offend any of you.
George, you don't offend anybody. You're a good guy.
I'm angry at myself for breaking down. Initially, I called myself back to New Year's Eve night when I was talking with those individuals and battling the increase in utilities and say, come to the meeting, it makes a difference, speak to them, they will listen. And that comment that was made to me, you're talking to people that make $100,000 a year that are being advised from people that are making $100,000 a year, and they aren't going to listen to anything that we have to say. And that kind of hit me because a year ago I was making $101,000 a year. And now I'm looking at the prospect of going back to Anchorage, living in my car until I establish myself again. What I heard tonight is advocacy for the person in the street from a member up there. And that, like I say, I wanted to jump up and down and clap and say it's important, I think. It's a new experience to be afraid. I'm angry at myself.
Don't be.
It's a new experience to be afraid of how you're going to make it each day. And something I wanted to say, and another thing, during my travels in the military, when I was in Vancouver, British Columbia, there was a van that went and would go to different parts of the community, and they would feed the homeless and the hungry, not only like the Salvation Army does during the daytime, but they would have a dinner, and as I sit on the wall or sit in front of Sitka Bazaar and watch those that I know and we know are homeless or hungry, if we could start something like that again. But I want to thank all of you, because I know all of you have put hours and hours and hours into the situation. And there were people that thought I was posturing myself to run to the assembly. And my comment to them was, now, why would I want to do that? Because they are spending 30, 40 hours a week, every week. And right now, I can spend 6 minutes at the beginning and the end of every assembly meeting under persons to be heard. And that's a better perspective for me than what you are doing. So I want to thank all of you and say that it's important for that person on the street. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment for the last several months, George, right? Okay, yeah, Dr. Wayne.
If I could be a member to be heard, persons to be heard, I'd just like to, as always, thank George Paul, because what he said here tonight happens to be very important. I read a report from a Harvard work group this morning concerning some of the overall economic aspects of this country. And what their findings were that people in the upper echelons, the recession is over. They are doing okay. But where the real issue is in the lower echelons, where there are more than 11 million people who are out of work. And all I can say is that it's real, it's happening, we cannot forget this, and this is why we need to start getting back to normal, because a lot of the things that we are doing today make no sense, except that it is hurting people, and that this really has to take a different direction. Otherwise, lots of very good people, lots of hardworking people, lots of people who actually fulfill the societal needs that all of us here in Sitka take. I don't know any, next time you have chicken, remember who's doing the plucking. It's nobody here in Sitka. It's other people who are working at lower rung jobs who are supplying our goods. And we really need to reconsider what is happening economically in this country. And we need to move forward. And I know there's a lot of fear is a big motivator, but I do not think it is as fearful as we are made to believe. So thank you again, George. Let's do lunch.
A motion to adjourn, please.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ooh.
Everybody come back. John.